What in the world?
I don't know. So cold the computer froze up.
Fixing it, I hope. And there we are. Good evening, folks. We're
Good
froze
evening.
up over here. On the clock with KBN, your periodical little 30-minute news update situation, all the goings on with Kansas Bass Nation. Bad Brad in the house, and special guest Clayton Rudman this evening. Bradford, what do we need to remind folks of this week?
Well, we have just a very few short days left of applications for the KBN scholarship. We'll take those through the 29th. So that's only 2-3 more days. You can go to our website, Kansas or KSBASS Nation .net, I believe it is. But you can go to our, what's that?
I've posted a link right to the form.
Oh, there it is.
In the comments.
There's a jot form there. That's the only way we accept the applications. Fill it out, get a couple letters of recommendation, send us your essay, and we will then begin deliberating on how many scholarships we're going to give and to who. Last year, we ended up giving 5 scholarships, and we split $4,000 between the 5 recipients. And this year, I don't get to choose. Danny doesn't get to choose. Clayton doesn't get to choose. It's the representatives from each one of the clubs decides how much we're going to spend and who are going to be the recipients. And we will do that at the March meeting, which is the 6th or 7th?
7th.
7th.
Saturday the 7th in Lenexa, Kansas.
Yep. But the deadline to apply is the 29th. So click on the link, send your information. It's all right there on the jot form. And we'll start deliberating after the 29th to see what we're going to come up with on the 7th.
Sounds good. Let's see what else happened this past weekend. The 20th annual Albers show.
Yes.
In Pittsburgh, or Frontenac, I guess technically this year. Apologies all around that KBN did not get there with the weather, with the extreme cold and the snow that was forecast. But they had a good event, and sounds like it was fairly successful despite the weather conditions. So,
I saw some of the videos, and the venue looks cool.
Yes, it did.
The venue looks really cool. I hope that they go back next year and we'll be there. And but that venue, the little bit I could see in the background, looked pretty nice. Plus, they had boats, they had campers, they had ATVs, they had a lot more stuff because of the size of the venue.
Mm-hmm.
So
very cool.
It'll be really cool.
Well, as it is the dead of winter and we are planning for the spring and summer with KBN, um, several of the clubs may have conservation projects on their minds. And Clayton Rudman, our conservation director, is here this evening, going to enlighten us on his plans for the season. Clayton, welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, so as many as you know, last year we applied for the AFCO and the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame grant, and we were awarded one from each company. So we were able to go out and purchase some mossback habitat. It's already sitting there at Wilson. Wilson was the lake that was chosen for the habitat project for next year. So I worked with the biologist, and right now we have a work day planned for February 21st to go ahead and build all the moss back. Hopefully, get a bunch of trees cut, and depending on if the water's soft or hard, we may be able to get some of that stuff put in the lake this year. So we definitely need anybody and everybody to come out. We have quite a bit of mossback stuff. I've got over 2 pallets full of different types of artificial habitat, anything from root balls to laydowns to habitat cities, and all of that stuff needs to be put together. And then also it'd be a good way to meet one of your local biologists. You can give him some input, maybe where you want the structure actually, placed in the lake. He's always, looking for areas to do stuff. But as long as the weather holds out, I'll be posting later on our Facebook page where everybody will meet and the time we'll get started. But I definitely want to give a huge thanks to AFCO and to the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame for investing in our fisheries in the state of Kansas. This is the second Bass Fishing Hall of Fame grant we've gotten in the last 3 years. So it's good to see those guys, making investments in the habitat, around the country. AFCO has a pledge where they give about 10% of their profits back to conservation every year, whether it's saltwater or freshwater, and that's kind of what goes to fund these grants. And with the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame, if you haven't been, it's pretty cool. It's there at the Wonders of Wildlife Museum in Springfield at the Big Bass Pro Shop. They've got a whole wing of just fishing memorabilia and all their Hall of Fame inductees, and they have a banquet every fall where they induct their Hall of Fame in, and they have a online and in-person auction where they auction away anything from jerseys, the fishing trips, the all sorts of cool stuff. And then you can also attend that banquet, as they induct their new Hall of Fame members. You can buy tickets and actually go there and hang out and be part of that ceremony. So that's pretty cool that it's actually open. But they use the proceeds from that to fund these type of grants, and they also fund a bunch of scholarships for, I think, for students wanting to go into biology. So, to create more fishing biologists and get them out there, and especially, they're really interested in, biologists that want to fish, right? That want to be tournament fishermen and understand, because there's a lack maybe of biologists that are true, bass fishermen or whatever that actually tournament fish compared to maybe just or a biologist. So there's some emphasis on that. So a couple pretty cool programs. Obviously, we'll be getting ready to write the grant applications again for next year. I'll write them as a state, but these are also open to individual clubs. So if there's something your club wants to do, you have a local fishery. Maybe you need better weigh-in equipment if you're hosting tournaments or something like that. You can put in for a grant. And if you need any help writing any of those, you can reach out to me and I can help you out with the criteria or anything like that. They're pretty easy to fill out. online. So I kind of wanted to get on here, give everybody an update of where we're at, kind of at with the conservation, and just kind of get it on everybody's calendars that we are going to have a work day on February 21st, and hopefully get a lot of the all the mossback stuff built, and hopefully some of it in the lake. And the goal is to get some big cedar trees cut down, get a bunch of stuff prepped. We got some dump barges in the area now, so we got the Corps on the board. We've got the state park on board to use their skid steer to help pick up some of them trees, and make it a lot easier and go a lot faster, so we can put a lot more habitat in the lake. So if anybody also has any suggestions for a lake, or something you want to see for a habitat project next year, my email's on the website. You can send me an email, and we'll work with the state habitat coordinators and get a lake picked for next year. But it's grant writing season again. All that stuff will be due here shortly. So that's kind of what I wanted to get on to talk to you a little bit about tonight. You might also see some stuff for me eventually coming. The Sports Fish Restoration Act, or most people know it, the Dingell-Johnson Act, which is the excise tax on fishing and outdoor equipment that basically the government collects and redistributes out to all the wildlife, fish and wildlife. That is set to expire in 2026. They introduced a bill in 2027. It's currently in the House of Representatives. And if that goes through and gets passed, then that would extend that act till 2031. So that's a huge revenue source, or huge source of the budget for the wildlife and parks. If you ever went out and looked at where they get most of their funding, it's from the two excise acts, the one on hunting and fishing, the one on hunting gear, the other one on fishing, and the rest of their budget mainly comes from their park fees that they collect for hunting licenses, fishing licenses, camping permits, that type of stuff. So I also encourage everybody to, if you can make it to the Wildlife and Parks Commission meeting in your area, go check out what's going on, with that. If you have any interest in what's going on in fishing game, and maybe some of the rules and the policies and stuff that they have to follow. And if you can't make it in person, you can always join. They do host it virtually, every one of the meetings. I do try to attend in person. Any of the meetings are out within a couple hours from where I'm located here. And if there's any topics, or if anybody sees anything on an upcoming commission meeting that we need to address the commission or wildlife parks, please reach out, and I'm more than happy to join. Either go to the commission meeting or join, and voice our concerns or opinions out there. That's the only way we're going to get heard as an organization, and as fishermen, is we have to go out and we're going to have to make our opinions and voices heard at those types of meetings, because that's where the decisions are being made at. So again, appreciate you guys for letting me come on and just kind of give a short update here of kind of where we're at with the conservation projects for 2026.
So Clayton, I want to give you a big shout out. I mean, you're I don't know, you're the bomb diddly. How do we want to say it?
Whatever the kids say.
Between the two grants that we got this year, it was $8,000. Is that correct?
That's correct. We got $8,000. Yes.
And it was a couple years ago. We got how much?
We got, I think, 2,500 a couple years ago.
So guys, I mean, Clayton is out there doing it, and this is all going into our lakes. This is all going into our fishing. And we're going to have an opportunity in February to go out and help him. Sounds like there may be a date again after that to maybe work on putting things in. But, I'm really, I was blown away this year when I saw that you were able to secure us $8,000, and then what you've been able to do with it. The mossback habitat, just in case the guys don't know, they can go on the website, and it is microplastic safe. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. They're certified. They went and got certified so they could put this stuff out in California. So it's free of any microplastics that would concern anybody about getting into, the water source or water stream. I think that they spent quite a bit, developing a compound or a formula, and they're good partners. They have a partnership with Bass. Any Bass Nation chapter can get 20% discount. So they also, our $8,000 kind of stretched into $10,000 with the discount. So they basically added in another $2,000 worth of product, and they shipped those pallets to us for free. So we didn't have to pay any shipping on that too. So that's huge when you're shipping big pallets of stuff that weigh quite a bit. It takes skid steers and stuff to get them off of the trucks. So we actually got $10,000 worth of mossback stuff is what we ended up getting. And I worked with their sales guy, and he's there out of Arkansas, and he'd actually fished some of the lakes in Kansas, so he was kind of familiar with what some of our lakes and stuff look like. But you kind of tell them, what you're trying to do, whether it's shallow or deep water, or you're trying to get recruitment or whatever you're doing, and then they can recommend the right products that they make to do that. So we did already dump some in Wilson. Some of the lake's kind of low. You can see the top of it, but it blends in pretty good. It adheres your algae pretty quickly, and it's pretty simple. I mean, the stuff slides together. It takes one cinder block to hold it, to sink it, so it doesn't take a lot of concrete blocks or anything. It's not like you're having to pour big old weights to get this stuff to sink down, and it's going to last for years and years and years. Unlike, cedar trees, they probably every 3 to 5 years you've got to go replenish those brush piles, or they just kind of dissolve. Where this stuff will last quite a while. I did talk to the biologist. The stuff we put in, he did have some pretty good shocking results on it in the spring. So it definitely was holding, bait fish, multiple different types of species of fish. So it definitely looks like, it is structure that will hold, bass or any kind of species. We're not only just, we're putting it in for bass, but let's be honest, all fish use structured habitat. So, even if you're not a bass fisherman or whatever, we're still enhancing the structure and the habitat in lakes that are really lacking a lot of structured habitat, right? Our lakes are fairly old when you think that they were, most of them built in the 50s. Any kind of trees that were in them, at least, the ones out in western Kansas, the cottonwoods and stuff, they don't last, right? They're not a hardwood. They're not going to petrify and last there forever. So, with the lack of aquatic vegetation, we really need to put, something in the lakes to encourage recruitment, when our fish, spawn out.
So your grant writing process, correct me, I'm just going to throw a couple things out there. You have to pick a lake. You have to have the support of the biologist. Is correct?
That's correct. Yep.
And so, guys, Clayton's been doing a great job out at Wilson, but as Clayton says, there are other lakes in the state.
Yeah. And I've reached out. I mean, there's 3 habitat coordinators that was created in the state of Kansas. There's one in extreme, like southwest Kansas, and obviously there's not a lot of what I'll call tournament lakes, just due to lack of water, right? I mean, there's not a lot of bodies of water. Nice guy. He's down there around, I think, Clark State Fishing Lake. Really nice small state fishing lake. If you're ever down in that part of the state, it's a pretty cool lake cut into a canyon. You just kind of driving through flat nothing, and you drop into a canyon, and there's a lake down there. It's got some pretty good fish and stuff in it. Then there's one for where I'm at out here in the region, and then there's one in eastern Kansas in that region. And yeah, he's the one that we try to get the greenhouse project to go through, and I think they did make some aquatic vegetation cages last year with a grant that I think the Leavenworth Bass guys got. So the state realizes, I mean, I think they understand probably aquatic vegetation's the best if we could get it, but all of our lakes, and it didn't really matter if it's Western Kansas or Eastern Kansas, they experience high levels of water fluctuation, right? And Western Kansas is mainly lack of water. Sometimes Eastern Kansas is too much water. You know, the lake goes really high and it floods out the vegetation, right? Like most of the vegetation that lives in Kansas, like is your pondweed or your water willow and stuff like that. And they can't take huge fluctuations of water levels, right? 3 or 4 foot either direction for any extended period of time is really detrimental to that stuff. So it's good that they, I think, recognize that, you know, if we can get aquatic grasses growing in our lake, these are probably the best habitat that we can get. It's just we have a hard time keeping them, you know, going once we get them, you know, established. So I know at least the biologists around our area, we've got some state fishing lakes that have a lot of water willow. So, you know, our goal is to try to harvest some of that and get some of that spread, you know, more out throughout the lakes. And most of my grants, I'll be honest, guys, I'm gonna probably pick lakes that are probably, you know, what we consider our tournament lakes, right? Not saying we can't go do something in a smaller lake, but you know, we're probably gonna look at the lakes that maybe we want to host our qualifiers at, or where a lot of the clubs host their, you know, club tournaments at throughout the season. So that's kind of, you know, what I focus on. And this year I didn't even pick the lake. I went to the Brian Sowards, the fisheries chief, and asked him which lake he wanted the, you know, the grant wrote for. So should be having a meeting. I think we're going to have a meeting with the habitat coordinators. I have reached out to them. They all have my number. I gave them my email address, all that, and told them if you had any projects going on in the area to let me know. But again, guys, if you know some of these biologists locally, maybe your buddies, maybe you fish with them or whatever, and you know they've talked about something they want to do, or you know, there's a lake, you know, you think that hey, we should be doing this here, and I know the biologist, and he'd be on board. You know, please reach out to me, and we'll, you know, try to get something set up or something coordinated, you know, or maybe write a grant for that specific lake.
It's interesting you mentioned um, like tournament lakes. You you can probably start counting them, and in Kansas, there's just
Yeah, I mean, you're talking, you know, but like you could probably do Hillsdale, you could do Melbourne, you could do Perry, you could do Milford, you could do Wilson, you could do Glen Elder. I mean, but yeah, you're still talking probably, you know, less than 10 lakes that would be true big enough lakes to host a state championship on or something like that. And like I said, if there is a small state fishing lake and maybe, you know, I know Bone Creek gets fished a lot. Um, you know, even like um, oh, where you guys have the scholarship term, I can't remember, Big Hill or whatever. If
hmm
there's,
yeah,
you know, if there's lakes like that, and then they understand there's a difference too between the Corps of Engineer lakes, right?
yeah,
And I think most of the lakes in eastern Kansas are Corps Engineers. A lot of the lakes out here are BLM lakes, Bureau of Land Management, and they have a whole different set of rules. So the Corps of Engineers maintain the dam, but BLM maintains the lake. So it's a whole different. It's not going to the local, like at Wilson, going out to the Corps guy that's right there at the dam, right? It's contacting somebody inside the Department of Interior in the United States government to get permission to do some of this, because you still have to have buy off on by everybody, right? Like, so not only do I need permission from Wildlife and Parks, but Wildlife and Parks needs to go get permission from whoever's maintaining the lake, right? So like I went to the Wilson biologist, you know, he wanted to make sure the Corps was good with it, and then said, yeah, we can do it. You know, this is what we're looking at. I told them what we would be doing, but you know, say if you chose a Glen Elder or something like that, right? That's a BLM lake. So then you're working with a whole nother department, to try to get that through the biologist, and he's got to go submit his paperwork to whoever maintains the lake. So it's usually multiple levels of authorization to get this stuff um, done. But again, like I don't know how all the lakes are. Even if you're an individual and you want to go out and do some projects, get a hold of me. I can get a hold of the biologist, and the biologist may write you a permit, right? If say you have a duck boat or a pontoon boat and you want to go put some brush piles somewhere, get a hold of me. I'll get a hold of the biologist, and if we can, tell them where we want to do it or whatever, I can get you probably guys a permit. Just what I would ask is don't go out and do this stuff on your own. It is against the law to dump brush and stuff in the lakes. I mean, you do have to go through the biologist. You got to go through the right procedures. I'd hate to see anybody get a ticket. So, but if there's something you're wanting to do, yeah, I'd ask you to just reach out to me, and I can try to get hold of the right person and get you a permit wrote, and then you can go out. Maybe it's your club, maybe it's a group of buddies or whatever. We can get some stuff done because it's going to take an individual. It's going to take a lot of individuals. The state's only got so many resources, and unfortunately, they don't really have any. When we all want to do, which is in the winter, either really late fall, right? They don't have any of their seasonal help. They're not going to get their seasonal help till probably May, sometime in there. You're right, and then all of us are usually busy, fishing, and then it brings in a whole bunch of other stuff, ticks and snakes and all that fun stuff that like to hide in cedar trees. So.
Did you see you had a question, Danny?
Yeah, I was kind of waiting to see how Clayton was going to explain that, because I think he's answered it. Brandon was asking if you have to use the state to get the grant and put them in the water, or can you do it yourself? And
Yeah,
yeah,
so I know I think he mentioned Grand on there, and Grand's a little bit. I mean, Oklahoma's I think is a little bit different, right? In the state of Kansas, you need to get permission from the biologist to do it, right? I think they want to make sure you're not putting a brush pile out in where somebody's going to be skiing
Right.
or next to a swim beach or
yeah,
stuff like that. So, um, like I've talked to a lot of the biologists, and a lot of the biologists, are like, hey, just get a hold of me. We can do, we can do stuff, especially if it's natural trees or whatever. They kind of want to know where that stuff's going because they also want to sample it, right? They I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if it's shallow enough they can shock on it, they want to see, what's going on and if it's actually helping, or not. So like most of everything we're going to be putting in is all going to be shallow habitat, anywhere from 8 foot to 3 foot, and they're going to be able to shock all that with their boats and see what comes up around it, because that's kind of part of the grants too, is they want to know how effective it is, right? If
Yeah.
they're giving you this money and it's not really helping your lakes out, then they're going to probably want to spend, either change the type of project you're doing, or find something that's more effective, type of thing. So there is reporting I have to do, provide reports back to the entities that gave us money, and let them know what's going on and how much money we spent, and when the project's going to be completed, and all of that. So like I said, I think Kansas is a little different. I know Grand used to do, and they may still do, that rush for brush where they built all the spider
Mm-hmm.
cubes, and you could put them on trailer and sink them around your docks and stuff like that. It'd be kind of cool if we could do stuff like that in the state of Kansas. I just don't think our wildlife and parks has the budget, unfortunately, to do a bunch of stuff like that. We do have an abundance of cedar trees though, so as long as we can get concrete blocks, and we can definitely cut enough cedar trees down to keep throwing them in the lakes. And then there's some other stuff, guys. Once um, I'm working on around the Wilson area, and it's going to be a trial project kind of between wildlife and parks and the Corps of Engineers. So once we get the grant submitted and all that, I can provide some more information on that. But we're looking to do some other things, in the state's looking to see way they can create some other types of structure and habitat around the country. So Wilson, I think all of our lakes mainly fall under two, maybe three. Most of them fall under the Kansas City district, the Corps of Engineers. I think some come out of the Tulsa district, the southern ones. I think maybe like Big Hill and uh,
I know,
one of the
I know Big Hill is, yeah. There's,
so is Council Grove. I think is another Corps of Engineer lake that's under Tulsa district. So I think those are two. But the Kansas City district at least has a new resource officers chief, and he's real big into conservation. So he's got some ideas on how to maybe do some conservation projects around the lakes in the Kansas City district. So we're gonna be applying for our Friends of Reservoirs large grant for the lake. So that grant is coming due. I'm not going to be writing it. We're just going to be giving our um, letters of recommendation, letters of support. That's the same thing that the Wildlife and Parks had put in for when they were doing the greenhouse. That unfortunately we lost, but there is still, like I said, we're still trying to do whatever kind of aquatic vegetation we can. It just may not be able to propagate it in the greenhouse. We may just have to propagate it in the lakes and in cages. But the other thing is I'll be attending the classic for the conservation summit for all the conservation directors. So all the different states, the Bass Nation conservation directors will be meeting, and we're going to go. Supposedly, we're going to go over a lot of the spraying that's going on around the country, I guess, or the war on aquatic vegetation and the maybe why it's being sprayed or then maybe why it shouldn't be sprayed. So, more to come. I'll have more on that after, we get back and see what all the, agencies, be interesting to hear, the states that have a lot of grass, Florida, Texas, some of those places where they're spraying, a ton of it or how they're managing it. I think here in Kansas, I mean, we have, the Phragmites, and it feels like there's kind of a war on those right now, and a lot of our lakes getting sprayed and killing, and maybe us as fishermen don't understand, why they're doing that, and maybe they have some good reasons of doing it. We just haven't been, that information hasn't been relayed to us or whatever. So it's kind of about the misnomer or what's going on with, spraying of aquatic vegetation around the country. So it'll be interesting. It's always good to hear from other state agencies and other state conservation guys to see what's going on in their states and what they're doing. That maybe we can do. Here couple things, couple easy conservation things you guys can do. Just when you're out fishing this year, let's not throw any of our used plastics in the water. Keep a Ziploc bag in your boat. Collect them. You can throw them in the proper bin, and fishing line guys don't strip off a reel of fishing line and throw all that stuff in the water. I mean, that's really easy stuff to do to make sure, we're keeping our waters as, clean as possible. So just a couple tips there, and then I'll be sending out some more stuff as summer gets along on fish care and some websites and some stuff. Bass has kind of redid a little bit of their fish care stuff, so I want to send that back out. AFCO also has it's called Bass Care 101. It's on their website. It's really good information on what they recommend on how to take care of fish, in the summer if you are doing weigh-in tournaments. In the summer, I think we'd encourage everybody to do, paper tournaments or catch, weigh, release, as much as possible. There is still weigh-in tournaments across the state, so I mean, we're not saying you can, but hopefully a lot of the clubs are practicing those types of conservation for at least for their their club tournaments. And if anybody needs anything, I've got the old, I can print you guys or send you emails of the old conversion charts of what, a 15-inch fish is 200 points because it should weigh 2 pounds or whatever. And I've got all that, or I've got the sheets we do for like our club, we do catch and weigh and release. Right on the boat, we bought a bunch of Berkeley scales. We weighed them all. We took them into a meeting and every one of them weighed within like a quarter ounce. We weighed the same weight with all of them, and we just have a big chat group, big WhatsApp, and we just take pictures of them on the scale, and that's how we do our club tournaments instead of doing the paper um, measurements. We just do catch, weigh, release, heaviest 5 right there on the boat, and then we can go down to a pound or whatever you want to set your minimum. So you're not having to catch 15-inch fish, or you can still do that under your bass pass seasons and all of that.
Cool idea.
That's really all I got. And like I said, if anybody does have anything, like I said, my contact information's out there on the website. That'd be the easiest way to get a hold of me. So that's really all I got tonight, guys. I feel like I took the whole call up here. So
That's fine, man.
That's what we wanted.
That's what we wanted.
Absolutely.
We want to give you all the time we can give you. You do a great job for us, and we appreciate it.
Yep, I appreciate it. I just trying to make our lakes a little bit better. So, because most of us, at least here, I mean, I go to other states and fish too, but obviously I want the fishing in the state to be, as good as it can be. I guess. I mean, you're not gonna chase double digits and stuff like in this state, but obviously, I mean, I'd like to see all of our lakes be healthy, fun to fish, and it would spread out, a lot of the tournament pressure too. If we can get a lot of the lakes, instead of the hot lake taking all the pressure for 2 or 3 years, the more lakes we can get to fish better, the more we can spread out the club tournaments and the money tournaments across the state. So,
Clayton, before you go,
Mhm.
Brent Lanew's got a question. Any word on any of the bass stocking programs?
So the stocking information is out on Wildlife and Parks website. What I can tell you is I talked to Brian, and they produced the most fish I think they've ever produced last year. I believe the whole Farmington hatchery was just largemouth bass last year. So the states, I mean, and they're all early spawners, right? They're all the ones that should grow better than the natural spawn out ones. And like I said, we may not like where they put them, right? And so I know they've changed the way they're trying to do it. They're trying to only put them in lakes that have rises to give the fish the best chance of surviving, right? So if you throw them in a lake that's 8 foot low and has nothing in the shoreline, they just become fish bait, right? They just become bait for other predator fish. So they're trying to put them in any kind of lake that had a rise. So out in western Kansas, I know they put a bunch of Glen Elder early spawners. I think Clinton got. I had to go back and look, but I think Melbourne got some. But they're out there. If you go on the Wildlife and Parks page and look at the stockings, they do have the 2025 stockings out there now for where they threw all the largemouth and smallmouth in the state of Kansas.
Good information.
And I don't know what their plan for this year is, but like I said, I did talk to Brian at one of the Wildlife Parks meetings, and he said that they grew. I think they came up short the year before, but last year they really focused on trying to produce as many as they could, where they dedicated a whole hatchery, I believe, just to growing early spawn largemouth bass.
Cool.
So, and those will make up a large percentage of your fish in a lake. I mean, when they do fin clip samples and stuff like that, everything they did in Wilson, it was a high percentage of the fish that were being weighed in tournaments and stuff were actually coming from those early stockings of those early spawners, because they just have a better chance of surviving and getting big enough not to get eaten before winter.
Well, Danny,
Yes.
once again, when we first started this, we worried how the hell could we spend 30 minutes talking?
What in the world would we talk about for 30 minutes?
And on the stockings, guys, I'll post. I'll put it on Facebook. I'll put it on our in our members lounge, or I can post it right the link right to the Wildlife and Parks largemouth bass stocking page. That's pretty easy to do.
Cool. Good man.
And
Awesome.
they also have, if anybody's interested, they do have all the. You can go download a KMZ file of all the fish habitat in the state of Kansas too. It's not broke out per lake, but if you actually want to download all the brush files and everything they've put in there on your depth finders, you can go out and get the file on their website. It's one file for all the brush files, and then you can convert it into whatever graph you may be using.
Man, I don't know if I want anybody to know that or not. Clayton, great job, man. Thanks for coming
Yes.
on.
Yep. Well, like I said, appreciate you guys having me on.
Anytime, anytime. And one more time before we go, just a reminder, this
Yes.
Thursday, the 29th, is deadline for the scholarship application submission. There's a link at the jot form. Fill it out, submit it.
And I didn't say earlier, it's any KBN member or family member of a KBN member.
There you go.
That includes the youth. That's what we get most of it from, is high schoolers. But if you have somebody in your family who's already in college, or somebody in your family who's going to go back to college, look at the form, see if you meet the criteria, and I'm done.
Till next time, guys.